This week, we've talked a lot about sell high running backs, a lot about some buy low running backs, and I want to dive into our rest of season rankings just to give you an idea of exactly how I'm valuing these guys. Starting off tier one, not going to waste your time, CMC. Averaging 24.5 points per game this season. Would be higher than this if he did not leave that game early with an injury. The man's in his own tier. Nobody else comes close. Going down to tier two, this is where things get very interesting. We are going to have Austin Ekeler, Bijan Robinson, Tony Pollard, and Travis Etienne. Now, the first two backs in Austin Ekeler and Bijan Robinson have been very disappointing so far this season. Both of these guys were round one selections. You have Ekeler averaging 14 points per game. You have Bijan only averaging 13.5. And Ekeler also missed a considerable amount of time. Now, going forward with these running backs, we need to be ranking them for their future production and not what they've done so far this season. I am someone that drafted literally zero Austin Ekeler. Ekeler was my least drafted round one player this season for a multitude of reasons, including his age, including the addition of Quentin Johnston and what a healthy Mike Williams, Keenan Allen would mean for his target share in this offense. However, with Ekeler, when you have no Mike Williams, when Quentin Johnston has shown that he is absolutely nothing, and he's already gone through his bye, even though I do not have Ekeler at all, I'm going to have a very difficult time ranking anybody else ahead of him in a full PPR format going forward. With Bijan, I actually did draft a decent amount of Bijan Robinson this season. I think we are at 11% Bijan in our drafts. And this is a running back that if you look at his per game numbers, they're horrendous. The headache game was obviously a massive concern. I don't necessarily think that's going to be something we have to worry about going forward. And he has that floor when it comes to receiving down skill set. Now, going over to our next two running backs with Pollard and Etienne. Pollard is another running back that I really did not draft at all this year. I thought there was an outside chance that this was going to be a team that brought in Kareem Hunt. I thought they were possibly going to bring in Dalvin. They were going to bring in Leonard Fournette. Not that any of these running backs were better than Pollard and that they would take the job from him, but I was a little bit concerned that they would turn this into a running back by committee. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that has not been the case in the slightest. Pollard has been a full-blown workhorse running back this year. And even though I have so much Travis Etienne was my third most drafted running back this season. I'm going to win a lot of money if Etienne does well. I am still going to rank Pollard ahead of Etienne for a multitude of different reasons. One, Tony Pollard is averaging almost 5 receptions per game. The receiving usage is off the charts. Two, I do not expect these offenses to be too different from each other. Three, the volume is roughly the same. And four, Tony Pollard has already gone through his bye week where you're going to get the extra week from Pollard in comparison to Travis Etienne. We had a lot of people in our sell high video screaming at me saying, Mason, you're an idiot. What are you smoking? I would never sell Travis Etienne for Tony Pollard. And I knew a lot of people were going to be upset with us saying to sell Etienne, right? Because we spent the first 4 weeks of this season, every single buy low video saying, go get Etienne, go get Etienne, go get Etienne. He was a must draft guy for us. So everybody in the flock has him. Don't be upset that we're not ranking him ahead of Pollard, okay? Even if you go look at Underdog for expectations this week, Tony Pollard, they have his total pick'em at 96.5 total yards. They have Travis Etienne at 86.5 total yards. So you think I am that wrong in wanting Tony Pollard ahead of Etienne rest of season, adding on the fact that you get an extra game from Pollard? Why don't you go take the more than 86.5 total yards on Underdog with Travis Etienne and the fewer than 96.5 total yards? And I would pair that up with either your special pick'em that you are going to get with Amon-Ra St. Brown, more than less than half a total yard. That's going to be a flock exclusive special pick'em, and everybody should have that as long as you use code FLOCK, whether you signed up 2 years ago, last year, yesterday, today, or tomorrow. And on top of that, if you're new to Underdog, not only are you going to get that one, but a 100% deposit match, plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers. And ladies and gentlemen, an additional special pick'em this Sunday, more than less than half a total yard for Jalen Hurts. Find that link in the description and the comment section. But moving down to our next tier, we're going to go Kenneth Walker at 6. Walker's already through his bye as well. Drafted a lot of Kenneth Walker. Love the guy. I do think Charbonnet has a role in the second half of the season, particularly as a receiver. However, Jonathan Taylor will be that next guy at 7 with Saquon Barkley. Why I'm going to have Barkley behind Taylor is I just think that Taylor's going to be in the better offense going forward. And I know that's kind of crazy to say, right, where you have Gardner Minshew as the quarterback in Indy. I just really have no faith at this point in the offensive line for the Giants. Whereas if you're going to look at the Indianapolis Colts, you had Zach Moss at points being a top 5 running back in fantasy this season. The contract, the talent profile of Jonathan Taylor indicates that he will be the guy for Indy in the second half. So yeah, if you had that kind of production from Zach Moss, I'm willing to bet on Taylor over Barkley. Breece Hall will be our next guy. Breece Hall is only at 13 points per game so far this year. Should be much better going forward. And with Hall, really the only limiting factor that you have at this point, considering the fact that he is that full down bell cow and you have him through his bye, is Zach Wilson in this offense just being a train wreck. And then Alvin Kamara will be our last running back in this tier. We have Alvin Kamara at RB10. And with Kamara, in a full BBR format, obviously, this is a running back that is hard to get away from at this point. The only running back that we have ranked so far on this list that has averaged more points per game than Kamara so far this season in a full BBR format is Christian McCaffrey. So I understand if you would rather have Kamara over Hall, Barkley, Taylor, Walker in a full BBR league, you do you. The reason I'm going to have him down here is he's been very inefficient. He has really no role in the red zone with Taysom and Jamal. Jamal most likely vulturing. We haven't seen it yet. But nonetheless, players vulturing him at the goal line. And I'm afraid that they look at this Saints offense and this coaching staff says, well, you know what? Maybe it's not a good idea to have Alvin Kamara seeing 10 receptions for 30 receiving yards every game. Maybe we need to tell the check down princess to look further than 5 yards downfield. So I think the offense may change a little bit with Kamara as well, which is why I'm going to be hesitant to have him up there in tier 2. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we'll go DeAndre Swift at 11. With Swift, phenomenal, running behind the best offensive line in the NFL, the full-blown starter. He hasn't made it through his bye, plus you do have Jalen Hurts taking rushing touchdowns at the goal line. If you had no Jalen Hurts of tush push, whatever you want to call it, DeAndre Swift would be up there next to Kenneth Walker. Now, Josh Jacobs will be our next player at 12. And with Jacobs, not going to lie to you, I am concerned. And everybody was panicking earlier in this season. And I was saying, oh, you know what? Yeah, Jacobs has been bad. This offense is bad. But at the end of the day, he's still the number 1 running back in receptions in the NFL. We got to hold on to him. Well, that receiving volume maybe is going downhill. The split that you have in this backfield is maybe leaning away from Josh Jacobs at the same time. So despite me being, I want to say, nonchalant in panicking about Jacobs at the beginning of the season, now I am beginning to get a little more worried. Devon Achane, David Montgomery will be our next 2 backs. Obviously, these will be running backs that naturally rise up these rankings as they get healthier and healthier. Devon Achane actually is at 25.5 points per game this season. Devon Achane is the number 1 running back in points per game. Crazy to say, but obviously it's been off of an incredibly small sample where, I mean, he's going out there and he's averaging a touchdown like every 7 touches. He's averaging like 11 yards per carry. If he would be able to keep this efficiency up forever, he would go down as the best football player of all time, literally. I think the efficiency comes down. The question is, how much extra volume is he able to get in the second half to outweigh the drop in efficiency? Now, going down to our next tier, we will have Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry at 15 and 16. Now, by the time this video comes out, we're recording this Thursday night, there's the outside chance that Derrick Henry is maybe playing for a new football team, but I don't know. I mean, every day we get closer to the trade deadline and Derrick Henry hasn't been traded. Every day I begin to think a little more and more that Henry's going to just end the season as a Tennessee Titan. I don't understand why he would, to be honest, especially with the Tannehill injury, where it looks like this team at this point is playing for legitimately nothing. So I would just assume that they are going to mix things up here, but obviously assuming doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. Jahmyr Gibbs at 17. Honestly, you assume that the rookie running back would continue to get better, but ultimately, if you have David Montgomery coming back in, it's going to be difficult for Gibbs to ever really see that job inside the red zone, which is why I stand by. If you're playing in a full PPR format, completely fine with Jahmyr Gibbs. But if you're in that non-PPR league, probably a player that you need to sell. Then Isaiah Pacheco will be at 18. Pacheco going up against Denver this week. Honestly, he'll be much higher in our rankings this week. I think we have him as RB12 in a great matchup. The issue is the Kansas City Chiefs just simply don't want to run the ball, of course. We will have Raheem Mostert at 19. And with Mostert, he is up there higher than pretty much everybody else on this list in points per game. He's averaging 20 points per game. He is a touchdown machine. And I completely understand if you wanted to go out there and you wanted to be more aggressive than we are on Mostert right now. My hesitation with it is, okay, what happens if we see Jeff Wilson Jr. begin to get work going forward as he is now healthy? What happens 2 weeks from now when we get Devon Achane back in here? Is this potentially a three-man running back by committee? Is this a situation where Devon Achane just takes the starting job? I simply don't know. And with that uncertainty, I think we have to give a slight discount to both these running backs despite how good they've been so far this season. Obviously, I'm not all the way out on them, right? We still have both guys as top 20 options, and Mostert will be much higher than this in our rankings for just this week in particular. Now, going down to our next tier, we will have Aaron Jones at 20. With Jones, I thought he'd be good to go by now. Jones wasn't at practice on with. I don't know what's going on. They're saying that maybe they can give him a slightly larger workload this week. Maybe this just goes back to you not necessarily wanting to bet in on 28, 29-year-old running backs we were talking about all offseason. Obviously, the offense isn't that great either. It's hard to be too excited about Aaron Jones. James Cook, Rachaad White will be our next two backs. As of now, we'll have James Cook ahead of Rachaad White. Now, I'm recording this right before the Bills game, so I don't even want to talk about these guys. Maybe something dramatically changes here. But I'm looking at it saying, okay, Cook, White, probably both startable. You're not excited about either. I will be concerned when we get Damian Harris maybe back in this offense later in the season and what that means for the James Cook volume. Now, Ramondre Stevenson will be our last running back in this tier, 23. He's only averaging 11.1 points per game. You have this clearly as a split backfield with Ezekiel Elliott. On top of this, this is one of the worst offenses in the NFL, and Ramondre Stevenson has been laughably inefficient all season. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we will have Javonte Williams at, honestly, I'm not putting Javonte here. We're going to move him down to the bottom end. We'll go Connor and Kyren Williams. Now, Connor's been on the IR for 2 weeks. Kyren's only been on the IR for 1. So you're going to have Kyren Williams missing that additional week. Obviously, these are going to be guys that continue to move up these rankings in the coming weeks. Next week, when James Conner is only possibly 1 week from returning, you could see him being up there at RB20. When he is officially back, you could see him going up there and vaulting up to RB18. And we would say the same thing with Kyren Williams. Every week we get closer to a return, he's going to slide up these rankings. But, I mean, y'all have heard me talk about this entire video, having to go through and having to think about who has gone through their bye week, who has not gone through their bye week, who's going to be missing time with an injury, who is not going to be missing time with an injury. And that really starts to matter when we're in week 8, ladies and gentlemen, because the playoffs are right around the corner at this point. We have week 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. We have 7 weeks left until the playoffs. So if like Kyren Williams is missing 3 of those weeks minimum, then that means you're going to have him. I mean, Andy needs to go through the bye. You're going to be missing him for half of the regular season from here on out. So that is really going to impact these guys that are on the IR. Javonte at 26, 3-man running back by committee and one of the worst offenses in the NFL. Hard to get excited about him. Then dropping down to our next 2 tiers, I honestly would want to throw all these players into the same tier. The issue is we just can't really fit all of them in the same row, but I just want to highlight all these players as options that you maybe can start now if you are desperate, but you just roster them because if you were to see an injury in their backfield, then all of a sudden they are much more appealing. Like Alexander Mattison right now, you're not really starting him, but if Cam Akers were to go down, he is a locked and loaded, I don't want to say stud running back, but he's a locked and loaded starter. Brian Robinson, you're not really starting him, but if Antonio Gibson were to go down, then he's a locked and loaded starter. Jalen Ward and Najee Harris, you don't really want to start either of these guys. They're averaging 10 points per game and 8.2 points per game. But if Warren were to go down, Najee must start running back based off volume. If Najee were to go down, Warren must start running back based off of volume and efficiency, which is why we'll have Warren one spot higher. Dameon Pierce, I mean, right now it looks like he's in a 3-man running back by committee in Houston. Maybe if Singletary were to go down, he's viable. Miles Sanders is a running back that we really don't know what to expect. I mean, obviously at the moment, he is splitting with Chuba Hubbard. Now, he is back at practice, so I'm assuming he's going to be the guy. But in reality, it's just so damn difficult to know. Deonta Foreman here. I mean, yeah, he was great last week. Hook'em Horn's obviously a must-start player for us. If you have no Roshan, if you have no Khalil Herbert. But what happens now if we get Roshan back in? What happens if you get Deonta Foreman back in a few weeks? Zach Moss, I mean, you can start him if you really need to. But honestly, with the healthy Jonathan Taylor, I'm not too excited about it. Tyler Algier, you can start him if you need to, but with a healthy Bijan Robinson, I'm not that excited about it. But they're premium handcuff backs. If we were to see an injury to Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier is probably a league winner. If you were to see an injury to Jonathan Taylor, Zach Moss is a league winner. Then Jerome Ford, I mean, going back to what we were talking about previously, these guys that are dealing with injuries, I mean, it's just difficult to rank them in our rest of season rankings. And even best case scenario for Jerome Ford, he does come back. He's still splitting the backfield with Kareem Hunt and Pierre Strong, you know? So not only to have a running back missing time, but when he does manage to get back, he'll be in that committee as well. And then Tajee Spears, right now, not really startable, but if something were to occur to Derrick Henry, then obviously he skyrockets up these rankings, whether that's with a trade or an injury. So really, all of these running backs in the last two tiers are desperate starts that have upside if their situation were to change. And I hope we were able to help you all out with this rankings list. Please go to the comment section. As always, let me know why I'm so stupid. Let me know what I am missing here. And as you go and type out how much of an idiot I am and how we should just continue to hold on to Travis Etienne and not sell him for Tony Pollard, I want to remind you, you're more than welcome to take the fewer than 96.5 total yards on Pollard, the more than 86.5 total yards on Travis Etienne on Underdog this week. I'd pair that up with your special Amon-Ra St. Brown, pick him more than less than half a total yard. If you use promo code FLOCK on Underdog, you're going to get that, a 100% deposit match, plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers, and that Jalen Hurts special pick him more than less than half a total yard on top of it. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day, and really hope we get to see you out in the live stream later tonight.